There is a gravel road in the Alder Creek National Forest that does not appear on the current visitor map. If you pull up the 2024 edition, the one they hand out at the Harmon Ridge entrance, you will see Forest Road 9 marked clearly, running northeast from the Blackwater Basin toward a trailhead called Seneca Bald, labeled as a seasonal road. Open May through October. Standard single lane with pluots. Elevation gain of approximately 2,000 feet over 7 miles. But if you drive out there today and look for the turn, you will find a steel gate bolted across the entrance with a chain thick enough to anchor a boat. The brown Forest Service sign reads, "Road closed. No public access." Below it, someone has zip-tied a laminated sheet that says, "Permanent closure. Do not enter. Not seasonal. Not temporary. Permanent." I helped write that closure order. My name is Daniel Reeves. I spent 14 years as a law enforcement ranger with the U.S. Forest Service, most of it assigned to the Alder Creek National Forest in western North Carolina. I left the service in 2023, not entirely because of what happened on that road. There were other reasons. Accumulated reasons, but I would be lying if I told you that the events of October 2020 did not fundamentally change how I understood the work, how I understood the mountains, how I understood what a road is when you strip away the comfortable assumption that it simply connects to points. Forest Road 9 was one of 14 maintained gravel roads in the Blackwater Basin. Most of them traced old timber access routes from the 40s and 50s, converted to recreational use when the contracts expired. They were popular with hunters in fall, wildflower people in spring, and the occasional backpacker using them to reach trailheads deeper in the wilderness. The roads were rough and steep, but manageable in any decent truck. Road 9 was different. For one thing, it was longer than the others, 7.1 miles from the lower gate to the turnaround at Seneca Bald. For another, it ran through a section of drainage that was unusually isolated. The terrain on either side dropped away hard. Above 4,000 feet, the forest opened into grassy balds and rock outcrops, with views that ran 60 miles on clear days. Below that transition, the canopy closed tight over a road cut into a narrow ridge, with steep draws falling off both flanks. The road was also the only vehicle access to a cluster of dispersed campsites near the top. Primitive sites. No water, no facilities. Popular because of the solitude and the elevation. I patrolled it regularly. I knew the mileage between every landmark by memory. 2.4 miles to the first switchback. 3.8 to the creek crossing. 5.3 to the rock cut. 6.1 to the upper meadow pullout. 7.1 to the turnaround. I trusted those numbers the way you trust the floor under your feet. On October 3rd, 2020, a Saturday, we received a call at the Harmon Ridge Ranger Station at approximately 3:55 p.m. A man named Gerald Foss, 67, had called 911 from a cell phone to report that his wife, Patricia Foss, 64, had fallen at their campsite near the top of Road 9. She had tripped near the fire ring, landed on a rock ledge, and he believed her wrist was broken. She could not walk easily due to the shock and pain. He was requesting assistance. This was a routine call. I confirmed with dispatch that I would respond, grabbed my medical kit, and headed for the road. My partner that day was a seasonal ranger named Corin Marsh, second year, practical.com, under pressure. We took my patrol truck and hit the lower gate at 4:17 p.m. I logged the time. Force of habit. The weather was clear. Dry October air. The light coming in low and golden the way it does in the southern Appalachians in fall, turning the gravel warm-colored and the tree line copper. We drove at normal patrol speed. I was talking to Corin about a permit dispute we'd been handling near the Basin Creek. Normal conversation. The road felt completely normal. Every landmark appeared exactly where I expected it. Then, at 6.1 miles, where the upper meadow pullout should have been, it wasn't there. I slowed without realizing I had slowed. Corin noticed. She looked at me instead of the road. What was in front of us was not the upper meadow pullout, with its wooden marker post and 60-mile view of the western ridge. What was in front of us was dense, mixed hardwood forest. The kind of thick, unbroken canopy you find at mid-elevation, not at the exposed shoulder of a bald mountain. I was looking at trees where there should have been open sky, and a panorama that I had seen 300 times. I checked the odometer. It read 6.1 miles from the lower gate. I was exactly where the pullout should have been. I kept driving. At 7.1 miles, the exact mapped distance to the turnaround, the road did not end. It continued. Same grade, same gravel, same drainage channels worn into the surface from decades of use. The forest on both sides had shifted to something I did not recognize from this road. The trees were larger, older. There was a sycamore on the left shoulder, a species I had never seen above 3,000 feet in this part of the state. The understory was gone. The canopy was 30 feet overhead and unbroken. I pulled over at a wide spot. We both got out. The air was wrong. September warm, not October cool. The kind of humid warmth that belongs in the valley, not at elevation. We had been in dry mountain air 12 minutes earlier. I got on the radio. Static, not the sharp crackle of a dead zone, but something softer, a breathing quality, like someone holding an open microphone very close to their face. I tried twice. Corin tried her handheld. Nothing. My cell phone showed no signal. I made a decision I have questioned many times since. I kept driving. My reasoning: we had a 64-year-old woman with a broken wrist waiting for us. We had been dispatched, and the road was still passable. I assumed I had miscounted something. I assumed there was an explanation. At 8.3 miles, 1.2 miles past the mapped end of the road, we found Gerald Foss's truck. A dark red Ford F-150, parked on the right shoulder. Behind it sat a white Subaru Forester I did not recognize. Both vehicles were empty. Beyond the F-150, orange flagging tape was tied to branches at regular professional intervals, marking a boot path into the woods on the left side of the road. I did not have orange flagging tape in my truck that day. Neither did Corin. We followed the tape through oak and laurel for about 160 yards. The forest was wrong quiet, not the staged silence of horror, but muffled, like hearing the outdoors through a closed window. Birds were present, but distant. No wind. No creek sound, though I could see the terrain falling toward a drainage on my left that should have been running. The flagging led us to a natural clearing, maybe 40 feet across, carpeted in moss. Patricia Foss was sitting in a folding camp chair in the center of it, a fleece jacket over her shoulders, her right wrist wrapped in a cloth and clearly swollen. When she saw us, she began to cry, not from pain, from relief. I asked where her husband was. She said he had driven down to find cell reception and come straight back. That was hours ago. I checked my watch. It was 4:58 p.m. Gerald Foss had called 911 at 3:55. 63 minutes had passed, not hours. I asked about the white Subaru. She said they had been alone at their campsite. She had not seen any other vehicle. She had not moved from the clearing since her husband had carried the chair over from camp after her fall. I asked her to describe the campsite. She described dispersed Site 11, the one with the flat rock shelf and the view towards Seneca Bald, consistent with her original call. Site 11 was supposed to be at mile 5.9. We were at mile 8.3. The clearing around us had no rock shelf, no fire ring, no view. Just the moss and the deep forest and the muffled wrong quiet pressing in from every direction. I did not tell her where we were. I told her we were going to get her out. We helped Patricia Foss back to the road. It took 25 minutes over uneven terrain. When we reached the trucks, the white Subaru was gone. I am certain of this. When we arrived, 2 vehicles were parked on the road shoulder. When we returned 25 minutes later, one of them was not there. No tire tracks indicating it had pulled out. The gravel was undisturbed. No engine sound, no dust cloud fading in the trees ahead. It was simply absent. Corin stopped walking and stared at the empty space, where it had been for a long time without speaking. I understood. We had a patient. We loaded Patricia Foss into the back seat, and I went back to check the F-150 doors unlocked. Keys in the ignition. A thermos of coffee in the cup holder, still warm. Gerald Foss's wallet on the passenger seat. His phone on the dashboard, screen showing no signal. A man had left his wallet, his keys, and his phone. "We need to leave," Corin said, quietly, not looking at me. I put the truck in gear and started back down. For the first 3 minutes, The road was the same unfamiliar version: dense forest, warm air, flat gray light, despite a clear sky visible through canopy gaps. The odometer counted backward from 8.3. At 7.6 from the gate, we came around a curve, and the forest changed. Not transitioned, changed. The sycamores were gone. The humidity dropped. The air smelled like fall again, dry leaves and cooling granite. The light shifted back to October gold. At 7.1 miles, where the turnaround had not been on the way up, the turnaround was there. The gravel loop, the wooden marker post, the trailhead sign for Seneca Bald. The dispersed campsites were visible off to the right, exactly where they were supposed to be. At 6.1 miles, the upper meadow pullout appeared, complete, the 60-mile western view, now turning red in the setting sun. Everything was back. I drove steadily and did not stop. We reached the lower gate at 5:49 p.m. An ambulance from the county EMS was waiting. While the medics transferred Patricia Foss, I walked a few steps away and tried my radio. Immediate response, clear as a bell. I gave the transport report on Patricia. Then I reported Gerald Foss as a missing person and gave dispatch his last known location as mile 5.9, site 11. The location where he should have been, not where we had actually found his truck, at mile 8.3, on a section of road that did not exist. I gave them the lie because I did not have language for the truth. The search for Gerald Foss began that evening. 6 people, 2 districts, 2 county deputies. We drove up Road 9 at 9 p.m. with headlamps and flashlights. The road was 7.1 miles long. Every landmark was in its correct position. Gerald Foss's red F-150 was parked at the pullout near Site 11 at mile 5.9, the exact location where it was supposed to be. The truck I had found at mile 8.3, more than a mile past the end of a road that ended at mile 7.1, was now parked at mile 5.9. I had locked it myself. The doors were still locked. The wallet was still on the seat. The thermos was still in the cup holder. The K9 team tracked Gerald Foss's scent from the campsite to the road and followed it uphill to the turnaround. At the turnaround, the dog sat. Scent. Termination not faded. Terminated, as if the person had stopped existing at that precise point. Beyond the turnaround was a footpath leading to the Seneca Bald Trail. The dog showed no interest in it. Gerald Foss had walked to the end of the road. His scent ended there. We searched for 9 days. Air support, foot teams, grid searches of every drainage within 3 miles. We found nothing. No clothing, no footprints, no physical trace of Gerald Foss beyond the scent trail that ended at the gravel loop where Road 9 stopped being a road. In November 2020, 6 weeks after the search was suspended, I started pulling records, not the Fossey file. I pulled maintenance records for Forest Road 9, going back to its construction in 1941. I pulled visitor contact logs, incident reports, everything available through the district office, and some things I had to request through the supervisor's office in Asheville. What I found was not a single dramatic document. It was a pattern. And the pattern only became visible when I laid everything out on my kitchen table on a Wednesday night and spent 4 hours connecting dates. In 1989, a deer hunter named Carl Briggs reported to a Harmon Ridge ranger that he had driven Road 9 to the turnaround and continued for what he estimated was another 1.5 miles on a road that should have ended. He filed the report because he wanted to know if the Forest Service had extended the route without updating the map. The ranger wrote it up as a navigational error. No follow-up. In 1996, a couple from Knoxville complained that they had driven Road 9 for what felt like 12 miles before finally reaching the turnaround going downhill. They described the forest in the upper section as different taller trees, warmer air. Filed under visitor navigational confusion. No follow-up. In 2003, a trail maintenance crew working near the Seneca Bald turnaround reported finding a vehicle parked approximately 1.5 miles above where the road ended. The crew leader had appended the observation to a routine trail condition report. She described the vehicle as a white Ford Ranger, empty, engine still running. She said the road continued past the turnaround in a direction she had not seen before. When the crew returned the following morning, the road ended at the turnaround as mapped. The Ranger was gone. She asked about it at the district meeting, and was told she had probably misjudged the distance. She had not misjudged anything. In 2007 and 2011, vehicles were found abandoned at dispersed sites on the upper road at the end of hunting season. Both owners were classified as missing persons. Neither was found. In both cases, the canine trail led from the campsite to the road, followed the gravel uphill to the turnaround, and terminated. There were 13 reports across 31 years. Not all involved missing persons. Some were only complaints about the road being longer than it should be. But 6 of those 13 involved people who were never located. And in every case where a search dog had been deployed, the scent ended at the turnaround. I took all of this to my district ranger, a man named Thomas Ewell, in December 2020, 28-year veteran. The kind of person who made you feel the situation was manageable just by the way he sat. I laid out the records. I told him what had happened on October 3rd. I told him the road had extended past its own terminus, and that I believed Gerald Foss had walked into that extension and not come back. Thomas listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and rubbed his face. "I know," he said. He opened his desk drawer and removed a manila folder. Inside was a handwritten memo dated April 2006 from the previous district ranger, a woman named Helen Sowers, who had retired in 2014. The memo was addressed to her successor and ran 4 pages in neat block printing. Helen Sowers had documented the same pattern one had found, but more comprehensively. She had traced anomalous distance reports on Road 9 back to 1954, 13 years after the road was built. She had cataloged 8 missing persons between 1954 and 2005, whose last confirmed location was the upper section. She had noted the scent termination pattern. She had noted the warm air anomaly and the gray light quality, and she had documented something I had not found in my own search. In 2001, a Forest Service hydrologist named Dr. Vera Kim had driven Road 9 alone to collect water samples from a spring near the turnaround. She did not return by her scheduled check-in time. A ranger drove up to look for her and found her vehicle at the turnaround. He searched the trail beyond without finding her. 4 hours later, Vera Kim drove down Road 9 in her own vehicle and arrived at the lower gate. She was confused and slightly disoriented. She said she had collected her samples and driven straight down. She did not understand why anyone had been looking for her. Her samples were in the truck, correctly labeled and dated. But when the lab analyzed the water, the mineral composition did not match any spring in the Blackwater Basin. Elevated trace elements, unusual sulfate ratios, an unidentified organic compound that the lab flagged for resubmission. No one resubmitted. Vera Kim reported nothing unusual about her drive. But Helen Sowers had noted one detail from her account, mentioned almost as an afterthought. On her way up, Vera had stopped to speak with a ranger at the lower gate. An older man, gray-haired in the standard green uniform with a badge and a clipboard. He had checked her permit and told her to drive carefully on the upper switchbacks. No ranger had been assigned to that gate that day. Helen Sowers' memo ended with a single sentence underlined twice. This road should be permanently closed. Thomas told me he had tried to implement that recommendation twice since taking the district in 2015. Both times the closure had been blocked at the forest supervisor level. The reason was always the same. No documented safety hazard meeting the threshold for permanent closure. Missing persons on a forest road were not sufficient. Anomalous distance reports were not sufficient. Without a structural failure, a geological hazard, or a pattern of vehicle accidents, the road stayed open. They want something they can put in an engineering report, Thomas said. I cannot hand them Helen's memo. I cannot hand them your account. They will file it, and the road stays open. So I did the only thing I could think of. I began driving Road 9 on every patrol shift that took me near the basin, checking the campsites, noting every vehicle, every plate, every person, keeping a personal log. I wanted a record. If someone else disappeared, I wanted to be able to say precisely who had been on that road and when. For 14 months, the road was 7.1 miles long every time I drove it. The turnaround was where it belonged. The landmarks were reliable. Then came December 11, 2021. I was not scheduled to patrol the Blackwater Basin that Saturday. I was covering a permit detail on the river access road, 40 minutes east, when dispatch relayed a call at 1:45 p.m. A man named Raymond Coble, 44, had called from the upper section of Road 9 to report that he had found a vehicle parked on the road past where the road ended. He said he had driven to the turnaround at Seneca Bald, and the road had continued. And approximately a half-mile past the turnaround, he had found a white Subaru Forester parked on the shoulder, with both doors open and no one inside. I pulled over and sat very still for a moment. A white Subaru Forester. I keyed the radio and told dispatch I would take the call. I drove to Road 9 and arrived at the lower gate at 2:28 p.m. The gate was open. Standard procedure during daylight hours in season. I started up. Every landmark was where I expected it. The road felt completely normal. At mile 5.9, I passed the dispersed campsites. A young couple was building a fire at Site 10. They waved. Normal. At mile 6.1, the upper meadow pullout appeared on schedule. Empty. At mile 7.0, I rounded the final curve before the turnaround and found two vehicles. A green Jeep Wrangler, Raymond Coble's, based on the plate he had given dispatch, and parked beside it, a tan Dodge Ram with a hunting cap on the bed. Coble was standing between them, holding his phone, pacing. He started talking before I reached him. "The road keeps going," he said. "There is a white Subaru up there. Doors wide open. Nobody around." I came back down because something felt wrong. I looked past the turnaround. The Seneca Bald trailhead sign was there. The foot trail disappeared into rhododendron. The road ended. Gravel loop, drainage ditch, wooden marker post. The turnaround, exactly as designed. I told him the road ended here. He showed me a photograph on his phone. A gravel road, same width as Road 9. Same drainage channels. Same character. Parked on the right shoulder was a white Subaru Forester. Both front doors open. A water bottle balanced on the roof. No one visible. I zoomed in on the rear bumper. A sticker I could not quite read. A dealership frame. I asked about the Dodge Ram. He said it had already been at the turnaround when he arrived. He did not know who owned it. I walked to the Ram and looked inside. Hunting gear, a cooler, a sleeping bag, a permit tag on the dashboard. County resident, authorized for dispersed camping. The name on the permit was Frank Aldrich, 53, from a town 40 miles west. I ran the plate. No warrants. No missing person report. I asked dispatch to attempt phone contact. No answer. I told Coble to wait at the turnaround. Then I walked past the trailhead sign and onto the foot trail toward Seneca Bald. I walked about 70 yards into the rhododendron. The trail narrowed. I could hear a creek somewhere below and to my left. And then I was on a gravel road. Not in front of me like a doorway. Simply under my feet, as if the trail had always been a road and I had failed to notice. The air was warm and humid. The light was flat gray, despite blue sky visible through canopy gaps. The sound was muffled. I noted everything the way my training had taught me to note things. Temperature anomalous for December at elevation. Humidity inconsistent with current conditions. Acoustic quality altered. I was on the extension. I walked forward. Maybe a quarter mile, maybe slightly less. The road curved gently and consistently uphill. The white Subaru was where Coble's photograph had shown it. Both front doors open. Water bottle on the roof. I walked to the rear and read the plate. I did not have the number memorized from October 2020, but I recognized the dealership frame. Henderson Toyota, Weville. I checked the bumper sticker. A craft fair decal from 2019. I had seen this vehicle before, not in a report. Parked on Road 9 on October 3rd, 2020, the day we pulled Patricia Foss out of the clearing. The vehicle that had been beside Gerald Foss's truck when we arrived, and was simply gone when we returned 25 minutes later. The registration in the glove box showed the owner as a woman named Claire Odom, 37, from Weville. The key was in the ignition. The battery was dead. The phone charging cable in the console port was attached to nothing. I stood beside the open door of a vehicle that had vanished from a shoulder 14 months ago and reappeared on a road that did not exist. And I thought about Frank Aldrich's Ram, sitting at the turnaround with its hunting gear and its cooler and its sleeping bag. about whether Frank Aldrich had walked up the foot trail looking for a campsite and found a road instead. I thought about Gerald Foss at the end of a road. I thought about the scent trail that terminated at a gravel loop. I wrote Claire Odom's name in my notebook. Then I turned around and walked back the way I had come. The transition happened at the same location, somewhere in the rhododendron. The gravel simply became dirt and root, and the trail reappeared under my feet, as if it had always been there. Coble was still at the turnaround. I told him the area was being secured for investigation and asked for his contact information. Frank Aldrich's Ram was still parked in the afternoon sun. I called dispatch and reported a missing person, male, 53, last known location at the turnaround of Forest Road 9. Then I sat in my patrol truck and wrote up my notes while everything was still precise in my memory. 3 weeks later, I drove to the district office and placed them on Thomas Ewell's desk alongside a formal request for permanent closure, citing a documented pattern spanning 31 years and 14 reports. This time, the request went through. The gate went up in February 2022. The chain is thick enough to tow a truck. The sign says permanent. Frank Aldrich was never found. Neither was Gerald Foss. Neither was Claire Odom, whose white Subaru sat on a section of road that does not appear on any map, with a dead battery and a water bottle on the roof, and a phone cable attached to nothing. For 14 months between the moment it disappeared and the moment I stood beside it on a warm December afternoon, reading a dealership frame from a Toyota lot in Weville. The road behind that gate is 7.1 miles long. It ends at a gravel turnaround. Past the turnaround is a foot trail. The foot trail leads to Seneca Bald. That is what the current map shows. That is not all the road does.